Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to Talking with Teachers. Today we have with us Shaykh Jamal ud-Deen Hysaw. Jamal ud-Deen Hysaw, he obtained his bachelor's degree in political science from the Southern Illinois University. He also studied Arabic and Islamic studies at Abu Nur and the University of Damascus in Syria. He continued his studies later in Tarim, Yemen, where he studied at al-Mustafa under the tutelage of Habib Umar bin Hafidh, Habib Abdur-Rahman bin Hafidh, Shaykh Umar al-Khatib, and Habib Ali al-Jifri. He's also a student of Shaykh Muhammad Ninawi, and he teaches classes locally at the Medina Institute and the Atlanta Masjid, and of course in Atlanta, Georgia. It really grants me great pleasure to have him with us today. So I'd like to introduce you to Shaykh Jamal ud-Deen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you
Well,
for having me.
No, alhamdulillah. Thanks for accepting the invitation, Shaykh. It's really a pleasure to have this opportunity to speak to you today. And it's been some time. It's been some time since we last spoke. Yeah. So I moved to the Bay Area in 2007 from the East Coast, and I believe it was around that time you actually were living here, or perhaps at least you spent a lot of time here. And around that time, you may have still been in Atlanta, but I saw a lot of you during those early years here in California, and then eventually you disappeared. So I said, well, he's not around anymore, and of course, I discovered that you were later in Atlanta.
Right.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. Well, yeah, I wanted to begin by giving you an opportunity to speak a little bit about your upbringing, your background, and what brought you to Islam and to study for the benefit of the audience. And I do think that people often appreciate those type of stories about the personal journey of people.
Right. It's funny. So the last person that asked me that turned out to be a 4-hour podcast. So we will try and make sure that does not today. Right? Just keep it short and sweet. I was born in Bakersfield, California, but wasn't raised there. We moved from there to the Midwest in Pontiac, Michigan, and then from there to Memphis, Tennessee. When my parents split, I moved to Carbondale, Illinois. Because my mother went to get her doctorate in higher education around that time period. So we were an implant family into Carbondale. And then when she graduated, we moved to Edwardsville, Illinois, and then we made our way up to the Chicago area. And Chicago is where I call home. Because during that same time period, I wound up going to the same college my mother got her doctorate at, Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. And, the majority, not all, but the majority of my friends lived in Chicago. And then when we finally moved there, which I was so elated, I was so happy to get out of these little towns, moving to a big city, even though we lived in the northern suburban area of the big city, but I still had access. So I was always in the city, always with my friends and things of this nature. And this is also where I found Islam. During college, you used to hear a lot about Islam and, through rappers and things like that, because back then we had conscious rappers. It's not, you had options when it came to your rap music. You had your party rap, you had your conscious rap, you had just people, MCs battling, all these kind of things, so it was a lot different. And so I always kind of gravitated to the ones that always talked about Islam. And then upon learning about who Louis Farrakhan was, because the Nation of Islam kind of became kind of big by way of Public Enemy as well as Ice Cube. And then, at least for me anyways, and then started listening more to their conversations and what Farrakhan was talking about. I was also kind of a revolutionary, if you will, and so that kind of, I don't know, all of that kind of talk resonated with me back then. And I was an engineering student at that time when I first started at the university, but I always wanted to go into law. So I got out of engineering and went into, we didn't have a pre-law program, but all you could do is take political science, and then most of your courses could be like on a legal track. And so that's what I did. And then tried to go to law school, which is what brought me to Atlanta. Because after I graduated and lived in Chicago, in the city of Chicago, in Hyde Park, and that's where I took my shahada. Was well, actually, I took my shahada. I took it twice, to be honest. Just to say real quickly, after I graduated, I walked off the stage and I went to the house of this imam, Abdul Haq, Imam Abdul Haq in Carbondale, Illinois, who had been talking to me about Islam, because I went to him and said, look, I'm interested in about being Muslim, but I'm going to go to the nation. And he was like, I can understand, but he came from the nation. And he was like, no, you don't really want to do that. And he gave me my first Quran. And there's a lot of stories around that too. But anyway, so I told him, I said, look, there's another brother in Chicago that I've been talking to and his family about Islam, this brother named Yusuf Ali from Philly originally. And I was like, I'm going to go visit my dad in California. After I get back, I'm going to go to the masjid and take a shahada. And he was like, no, you're not, because back then, that's when, the gangs were doing drive-bys every time you turn around. People were getting shot up in LA. And because we're talking about like the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s period. And so he was like, no, man, you're going to take your shahada now. You might be a Muslim with Allah, but I need you to be Muslim with me. So I was like, all right, what do I need to do? You know what I mean? And,
right.
Yeah, so he brought his wife in and everything and his family, and I took my shahada, and but I didn't tell Yusuf because I didn't want him to, feel smited. So I went to LA, came back, went to Masjid al-Fatir on 47th and Woodlawn, and took my shahada again, in front of the community. And, since then, what was interesting, I was talking about studying because, I was like, I didn't know anything about Islam, man. It's funny. Everybody before you become Muslim was like, when they found out you were interested, everybody in the masjid, oh, brother, if you need help, I'm here for you. It's my duty. It's my responsibility to help you. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. And then after I took shahada, I need to learn how to say Fatiha. Yeah, brother, I'm a little busy right now. Brother, maybe we can get together in the time, bro. I need to learn my prayer now. What I mean? So it just it was a little trippy, man. So, but one brother, he pulled out a Hanafi text and he was like, yes, this is Islamic law, and maybe inshallah you'll get a chance to study and bring this back to your people. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. But they had some programs they had been sending people to Sudan, but students weren't able to, their thing was students weren't staying and completing the program. And so they stopped sponsoring students. But anyway, so it was my desire again back for law school, right? That brought me to Atlanta because I decided I needed to get my master's degree. And I thought I would go to an HBCU to do it. And I didn't, so I decided to come to Atlanta. My godbrother lived here, so it was like, it made sense. And I had been there a few times. So I came down here. What I did not understand was that HBCUs were private schools. I thought they were public. And because I came here thinking I would I'd stay in the city for a while, get residency, so I don't have to pay out-of-state tuition. Nah, it didn't matter, right? But it was upon that time period while I was there here in Atlanta, there was a brother by the name of Dr. Amin Best, who was, may Allah be pleased with him. He was teaching Umdat al-Salik, or Reliance of the Traveler, when Sheikh Noor Hamid Keller had just translated that text. If you remember those days.
Yeah.
Remember when it was like that thick, right? And so he was teaching from the book, and Sheikh Noor came to visit. And when Sheikh Noor came to visit, I came to that gathering, a dinner gathering that they had, and started talking to him, which I asked Sheikh Noor that magic question, what is tasawwuf, right? And anybody who's ever been in the company of Shaykh Noor knows that he doesn't talk like I'm talking, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's
Right.
very soft spoken. His eyes are usually down, and he's just easy,
Even
voice.
kill. Even kill.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But when I asked that question, it went from here to you
Mm-hmm.
know sat up, looked right at me, and then we began talking. And then I always say he made the mistake, but it wasn't a mistake, right? But he gave me his business card. And now, see, mind you, I had never met a real scholar.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came to Islam, I was one of those people. I was like that guy who wants to climb the mountain to find the guru to tell me the meaning of life. And so I was always looking for someone I could really talk to and have these deeper internal conversations with.
Mm-hmm.
And none of the people that I had studied, I met brothers who had studied in Medina, I met brothers who had studied in different places in West Africa and whatnot, but none of them were real scholars or people who really, or even had real spiritual knowledge, insights.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was the first person. So I was calling him literally every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he asked me, would you like to come to study abroad? And my first thing was no, because I got a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, you should come. And his wife is the one who hit me the hardest. She was like, Brother Jamal, if you are trying to put off your study or taking this opportunity to learn your deen for some pursuit in this dunya, know that everything in your life is going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will probably never open this door for you again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after you hear that, it's like, okay, how do I get my passport again?
Yeah.
That's what I did, and I went.
Mm-hmm.
And my intent really was only to stay for 2 years, learn some Arabic, and then come home.
Mm-hmm.
That was my intent. Until I started really liking what I was doing, and I was actually looking to after my third year there, or actually after my second year, and I had gotten married, and my wife at that time was pregnant with our first child, and I was thinking like I want out of Damascus. I want to go somewhere else, and I was honestly thinking of going to Sudan because I had really befriended some Sudanese brothers in Damascus, and I was ready to go to Khartoum. But then Allah opened the door for me to go someplace I had never even thought about going, which was Tarim, Yemen.
Mm.
And I had been through Shaykh Noor. He had told us about the Habā'ib, told us about his experience in Tarim, and I wanted to taste it. So the door opened for a 40-day program that they were having their Dora. They had an Arabic Dora, not the Dora people know of today. That didn't exist. Sheikh Ibrahim al-Siyafa created the Dora that people know of now in English, right? He started that. But prior to that, there was only the Arabic Dora. And I told Sheikh Noor that I wanted to go. And he eventually, said, okay, it might be a good thing for you. And I thought I was going by myself. Lo and behold, I wound up going with two other brothers that were also studying in Damascus, which was Sheikh Abdur-Rahman Yahya and Sheikh Ibrahim al-Siyafa. And then we met another brother who was from the United States named Ihab, rahimahullah. And so the four of us went. And once I got to Tarim, I was like, yeah, this is me. This is it. This is where I want to be. And I saw Habib Umar, and I got a ton of stories about my meetings with him. But when I looked upon him, I felt as though I was in the presence of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I said to myself, that's who I want to be like. Just hands down, I've got to stay here in Tarim. I did, it's funny, it was time to leave from the daughter. I was crying because I didn't want to go back to Damascus. You know what I mean? Like I was coming back to the US or some Western country. Yeah. I was just going back to another Arab country to continue what I was doing. You know what I mean? But I was crying because I didn't want to leave. And Habib Umar was like, you don't want to go and stay. I was like, I can't. I got a wife who doesn't know about this and all this other stuff because she was in America at the time. And so when I told her about everything, there was no argument. None. I mean, Allahu Akbar. There was no argument whatsoever. It was just like, let's go. I said, they got a women's school too that they're opening. So you got something you can do. It's not like you're just going to be there, And Alhamdulillah, we got to Tarim, Yemen, and Alhamdulillah, stayed there
MashaAllah.
5 years.
Yeah, inshallah. A beautiful story. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, of course, there's a lot I want to try to tease out, but I think I'm probably going to go back to Chicago. It's interesting. You say that Chicago's considered your home. A lot of people don't know about me is that I spent my first 11 years in Chicago, first
Oh,
11 years of my life in Chicago. So often
okay.
people say, "You're from Philly." It's like, yeah, I'm from Philly. Yeah, that's true. But I was
Right.
born there, and then we moved not long after I was born to Chicago.
Mm.
And so I grew up on the South Side, 122nd Princeton Street.
Okay.
So we moved back to Philadelphia in '84. So when I go to Chicago, people, I'll tell them I'm from Chicago. When I'm in Philly, I'm from Philly.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
So, yeah,
Subhanallah.
but yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah, no, I actually, I'm glad you brought up the your time in Tarim, because I wanted to ask you about that. What sort of attracted you to, and particularly to the Habā'ib. Because that's as you see a lot of our, my friends like yourself, Sheikh Abdul-Karim, and of course, Sheikh Yahya wrote this, and of course,
Mhm.
there was, Sidi Osama, rahimahullah.
Right.
A number of you guys, of course, have, of course, had some connection to that particular place, and I sort of already knew the answer to it, but I wanted to make sure that was sort of fleshed out a little bit, that
Mhm.
what's the draw, right, to people, why people feel that way. And I think quite often what people miss is that that people, or rather even Islam is actually spread by, people, right? It's not spread by just information in books, videos and those type of things. And I think that this is kind of a lost fact on people, and I'm saying it's not as one who actually has encountered, of course, the particular environment in the way that you have, or the people that you've encountered. I actually, years ago, I think it was 2009, I think it was. No, actually, it was before then. It was maybe 2003 or 2006. One of those years that Habib Ali, first time he came to America.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and so I was given the special task. I was a chauffeur. So
Mhm.
so he was here driving them to the different events. So New
Okay.
York and the East Coast, where so had a lot of good exposure to him, and
Right.
on very sort of private way. Of course he was very silent most of the time. But he was
Mhm.
more. I could tell he's more observed. He was absorbing the information and energy that he was hearing, getting from me and my two other partners who were with us in the car right at the time. And it came out quite often that once he actually had the opportunity to speak publicly, he would bring up things that we were talking about in the car, and I was like, how did
Right.
he get that? How did he get that? It was really subtle stuff, right? So
Mhm.
at any rate, I just wanted to mention that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say, man, for me, right?
Mhm.
I was also at a point. There was a point in life where people
Mhm.
who were becoming, who are mutasawwif, right? And people who were becoming part of different turuq, right?
Mhm.
Spiritual orders.
Mhm.
Um, People, it seemed like it was a call: come to the tariqa, come to this sheikh, come to this, come to that.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah,
never liked that.
right.
No, I
Mhm.
never liked that. I remember one time because I was in another tariqa previous to
Mhm.
the following the way of the Ba'alawi.
Mhm.
And brother came to me one time. He was because I hadn't been showing up to some of the gatherings because I just kind
Mhm.
of didn't like the vibe of the people.
Mhm.
And he said to me, brother, we have to, we're brothers because we're in the same tariqa, and we have to try to, encourage each other. And I said, no, we're brothers because we both said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna
Mhm.
Muhammadan
Mhm.
Rasulullah.
Yeah, that's it. There you go. That's it. Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
what made the difference.
Mhm.
And what I'm experiencing with you guys, I don't like. And so
Mhm.
I don't want to be associated. It's just bottom line. I just didn't want to be associated with certain people. And so the one of the things that I liked about the Ba'alawi when I went there, no one said you have to be a part of this. In fact, the time I was there, even my 5 years and cumulatively in Tarim, I've never heard them even use the word tariqa, except I could count maybe on one, maybe two hands.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's never a call to that particular path. The call is to loving Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, loving Allah, and following what we've been told to follow, and refining ourselves within the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's what got me. I didn't. What's funny, man? In the early '80s, as I'm sure you probably experienced this more than I have, living in Philly. The Salafiyah movement was really heavy, and because all the books, they had all the books and everything that was coming out, and brothers like, yeah, I got that Ibn Kathir translation, bro, and got this book by, man, Abu Amina, you know what I'm saying? And everybody was just, it was all that big stuff, and, the different names of people whom are no longer, popular within that movement, but they were big back then. But one of the things, man, I never liked, two things I never wanted to hear much about, and that was aqidah and the word sunnah. Because the way that it was presented by brothers back then, it was very violent. Right? It was very aggressive. And I mean, there was a brother in the masjid one time at Masjid al-Fatir, man. This brother got beat up. A brother pulled up out of his car, jumped out, whipped out his nunchucks, beat this brother up on the steps of the masjid, jumped back in the car and drove off because of his aqidah. Right? And I was like, yeah, this is what we're doing, man. I'm not trying.
Yeah.
I mean, I just came from church. I came from the church mentality. This is my pastor. This is my church. This is this. You know what I mean? And now I'm coming over here, and now you're over here talking. Y'all over here beating people up because I view how I understand God differently than you. You know what I mean? I don't agree that he has a hand or whatever, and you won't beat me up for that. You know what I mean? I just, and then, you're talking about following the Sunnah, brother, you got to follow the Sunnah. It was never a brother, this is the Sunnah. This is the way of the Rasul. It was, brother, you got to follow the Sunnah. It's about the Sunnah. You know what I'm saying? Asma'ul Husna wa Sunnah. You know what I mean? And that's all it was. And I didn't like that. I just didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, it didn't even feel intelligent. It just felt, and it didn't feel emotional. It felt, I remember the phrase, it felt completely emotional, but it was an aggressive emotion. And so those are two things I never wanted to hear. So when I get to, and I say this because when I got to Yemen, in Tarim, I watched Habib Umar, right? And I was watching him real heavy. I was watching him really, really heavily, and I'm watching everything he does, and I'm questioning everything. Why does he wear his turban like that? Sunnah. Why is he wearing that shawl? Sunnah. Show me. And they show me in the books. I'm like, oh, okay. Why is he wearing that overcoat? Sunnah. Why is he putting this cup on this plate over his cup? You know what I mean? I'm thinking first it's about the flies, but something told me to ask anyways, because there's a lot of flies in Tarim. So he was like, and they have no edda, by the way. Anyways, so I was like, why is he covering up? Because of the flies? No, it's a sunnah to cover your cup. Why is he walking like that? Sunnah. Why is he doing these kind of things? Sunnah. Every time I asked a question, the answer was always sunnah. Then I watched him make wudu, right, in this little well area. And I watched him make the sunnah of wudu. And man, it was beautiful. And that's crazy to say. But this man made wudu, and it was beautiful. And then that's when it just kind of, for me, it was a type of moment where the sunnah is beautiful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And after that, I was able to accept this conversation of the sunnah. You know what I mean? I was able to accept it and felt, because I felt it differently. And then I had to take a class. They made me take this aqidah class. I didn't want to take it, but they made me take this aqidah class. And then it turned out that everything that I'm really interested, because I do have an interest in the ghaib, in the unseen. And when he started talking about these things, and then talking about the Anbiya and all this other stuff, I got overwhelmed to the point where I screamed out, man, this is the class. You know what I mean? I mean, in English, right? And everybody turns around, well, like, what's wrong with this guy? What's wrong? I'm like, I've won.
You got the Holy Ghost. You got the Holy Ghost.
Right. If you're going to catch something, that was that moment, right? That's probably the first that's ever happened to me. But I was like, whoo. Woo, man. I was like, this is it. So now I'm seeing the Sunnah and I'm seeing aqidah in a different light, in a different way that made me excited. You know what I mean? That made me really take to it. You know what I'm saying? And that was really big for me. So for me, these were the things that brought me to the way of the Habā'ib. It wasn't being at the Mawlid, right? Plenty of Mawlids. Every day was a Mawlid when we were there. So during that time period, and it was like, so it wasn't, some people get enamored by the Mawlid, by the songs and these kind of things. And I'm here to say, brother, that this path is not about the Mawlid. If you only about the Mawlid, there's a problem with you. And I think you hit it on the nose, because this their whole thing has been and is still about da'wah. Right? It's about calling people to La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As Habib Umar would say, is removing man from the slavehood of man and returning him back to the slavehood of Allah. Right? That is the movement. And you have to start gaining knowledge of the book and the Sunnah in order to help disseminate this knowledge to the people. And that's what this is about. And if we're not about that, then what are we doing? You see what I'm saying? So,
yeah, mashallah, I really appreciate all that. I mean, I've had similar experiences, and I think you put things very eloquently regarding, like, even a lot of my own hesitations about certain issues regarding tariqah, of course, the issues of Salafism, similar like sort of experiences when it comes to those type of issues. And if anything, one of the primary reasons why I'd never given bay'ah to a sheikh was because of the followers of the shuyukh. Not that I have an issue with the shuyukh themselves, but it just just the idea. I knew that what comes with it is that it's membership, and once I'm a member, then people treat you a certain way. And I just felt like, well, it's not really supposed to be like that, is it? I mean, aren't you supposed to treat people a certain way regardless, right? Isn't following tariqah or just being a good Muslim, because really what it boils down to. You can call yourself Sufi and not call yourself Sufi. It's about being the best Muslim that you possibly can be, the best human being you possibly can be. And quite often, like I've told students from time to time, because I actually teach, the mabadi', the principles, the fundamental principles of tasawwuf as zaytuna. And I again, I know some people will think it's a bit, presumptuous of me to say, quite often I feel more Sufi than a lot of people who call themselves Sufi. Right, because I try to apply my understanding of fairness to everybody, right, regardless of the individual. I don't when I see a person calling himself a Sufi, he has this hatred, this sort of visceral hatred towards people, right, and they judge people, just based off of faulty information. They don't research. And there's so many people who are so much into the more devotional or the super devotional acts of, like you said, Mawlid, and not so much into study, that I found that personally to be a bit of a turnoff. But I'd never tell people that don't become Sufi, don't follow tariqah, things like that. If that's you feel that's going to keep you somewhat balanced, then go right ahead. And because I personally have concluded, well, a long time ago, that most people, I believe that most people actually can't. I believe most people are people of extremes. That we go to extremes, in our lives, and so different sort of pathways, they bring people into a certain degree of balance, right? And without it, they can't really have it. It's the minority who don't really need like that membership in this particular program or that program, who actually can just simply come straight to the Quran or the Sunnah, and interact with good people, righteous people, and sort of take an example from them and actually have this type of balance. That's what I've come to myself personally. Yeah.
Well, you're not, if you're blessed to be around righteous people, and you're blessed to be around the Salihin, then there are lessons in that in and of itself. And I think that, even like with this path that I follow, I've been blessed to be a part of, there's no like limitation. I have the opportunity to learn and to take from whomever,
Yeah.
uh, and be able to grow. My Murabbi is one, and that's fine, and I know that. But at the same time, I have, how can we grow if we're not benefiting from others, if we're not learning from others, and we're not being able, because knowledge comes from a lot of different places, and different perspectives come from different types of people. And as long as I know, I take my knowledge from people who are trusted in terms of their knowledge. You know what I mean? That there's some form of senate. You know what I mean? And what they do. Um, and some people who, and people that are grounded in the Sharia, right? Even if I were to listen to someone in terms of talking about the soul, um, depending on what they're saying, you know what I mean? It's a thing of, or is this person, if I know something about their background, do they come from a tradition of knowledge of ilm? You know what I mean? Because that is the foundation, and without it, what are you
Right.
doing? So, I mean, and then people have different opinions and views, and that's fine. But like I said, one of the things I've learned from our path, our teachers, is that, we're very easy. Very easy. And that's another thing that I like. It's very, you're very easy with people. You deal with people according to their understanding and where they are. And alhamdulillah, we try to give what we can give, and whatever you want, they could be, you want some tarbiyah, give some tarbiyah. You know what I'm saying? The bayah might be a little different, but we help people along the path, because again, this is all about going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right.
You know,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right.
and to your point, and it's funny because I was going to do a Facebook post about this. It's Marids are the worst. The students of Shiuch, they're the worst. A lot of them, because we're learning about staying away from the ills of the heart, such as jealousy and backbiting, slander. And some of the people I see perpetuating this the most are people who call themselves members of. You can't say Sufi because you're not a Sufi. You're a Mutasawwif. You're a person on that path, and by your actions and the way you speak suggest exactly that.
Right.
For those who know, then you know that that person ain't no Sufi. Like you said, they've got this inner hatred. You see people not smiling. You see people not showing love and concern. And so how are you spreading the dawah when there's no love and concern? I know, I do understand you have to solve as a personal thing. It's not a communal thing. It's really a personal thing, right? And if I do spend my time with people, I prefer to spend people who are ahead of me, not people who are like me. If I can, right? Because I want to grow. That's the point. It's about growth. And there's no growth if you're just with the same people. It's like when I was in college, right? I remember sitting around with my friends. We're all at the same level in this class, and then we find we're talking and talking and talking, no study. And then when it comes time to study, I find out that they know as much as I do. So I can't grow like that. So I started studying with other people who I looked in the class and I saw, okay, that person really knows their stuff. They're always answering all the questions. So I'm gonna go sit with this person. I sit with them, and now, boom, my grades are getting better.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I can't, likewise in this deen, I can't get better if I'm still sitting around the same people, or people who are not also looking to elevate
Right.
and are actively doing things that are being transformative in their lives, so that I too can become transformative. And so, you know what I mean? So it's like, it just gets bad, man. It gets bad. The stories I hear, what people tell me, yeah, it's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah.
So I don't, for what it's worth, I don't blame you for taking the position. It's just
Yeah, yeah. I guess a lot of my friends, they follow tariqah. They give bayat to sheikh, and again, I don't blame anybody or tell some or discourage anybody from doing those type of things. And and I know in some of it's kind of hard to say you have a Salafi friend, because it's hard to find one of those people these days. Right? It's probably never really been easy to do that, but even for those people who actually are reasonable from the other side. It's the same thing. It's like, okay, no problem. I remember when I worked in the prison as a chaplain, as a brother came to my office and said to me, the reason why I chose the Salafi path is because um, I've been doing things wrong my entire life, right? And I've been in and out of prison, and I felt that the only thing that's going to keep me out of prison, I have to be strict. I have to be hard on myself. So I have to find the hardest thing I can out there that's going to keep me out of prison. And that's kind of like, looking for a Sufi tariqah, so, but this is the brother said to me. And I was like, I can relate to that, So if that's if this is what you believe to be the thing that's going to spare you of, the consequences of your actions, then go right ahead, by all means, go ahead and adopt that, so. And even when the brothers would get into debates, we have the Ash'ari brothers, the Maturidis, and the Salafis, and they're constantly debating about aqidah. And then some of our Maturidi Ash'ari brothers they would leave the prison and recommit and come back. And then I would give khutbah and say to them, I said, listen, you guys are wasting too much time debating aqidah. I said a real sign of strong aqidah, or rather strong iman, is that you don't come back to prison, right? So that would be the sign that you're upon the hawk, right? So more so than anything else, right? No, of course you understand what I mean by that, not
right.
literally, but it's just,
I know what you mean.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, how about your family, your background, your upbringing? You feel like the way that your parents raised you, that it had something to do with the trajectory that you took, and it was something that you feel maybe you were lacking that led you to look for Islam or look for a meaning some other than, of course, the particular tradition of your household?
Interesting. My mother was, she was one of those ladies that was always in church, right? My dad, not so much, right? And I remember, going to church with my mom. My dad still laying on the couch watching Sunday morning cartoons. And I'm hot because I got to go to church. I want to watch cartoons. I don't want to go to church. You know what I mean? And then when parents, split, obviously my mom always had me in church. We got involved a lot. I don't know that. It's hard to answer that question because we didn't have a super religious household, right? We weren't in the house praying together all the time. We just went to church a lot, right? Especially because when I got in my teenage years, you become part of the youth ministry. You know what I mean? They had these little youth programs at the church. And so I would be a part of those things, but I was never really a popular person in my church. And so I only did a few things here and there. And then there was a period we just stopped going to church. But I think that there's always been, like, I remember one time when I was in college, I was in St. Louis, and I had just dropped off someone, and I went to my mom's church. Because when she lived in Edwardsville, Illinois, she used to go into St. Louis to go to church. And because it's like about maybe 30 minutes just outside of St. Louis, but it's on the Illinois side, not the Missouri side. And so you have to go into Missouri, and then she goes to church. So I went to her church. I just went in there because I just felt like being in the building. You know what I mean? I just felt like being close to God at that moment. And I remember the pastor came and he saw me and he was like, "Hey, you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." He said, You need anything?" I said, "No." He said, "You need money?" I said, "No, I don't need anything. I just wanted to be here." And he was like, "Oh," I mean, he was just shocked. You know what I mean? So I'm saying that to say that I've always kind of had something inside of me that was screaming for God. And I used to ask a lot of questions. And this is kind of what brought me to Islam, is asking the questions and not getting answers. I remember when I was in college, I had gone to this, we had a conference at my school, and the Black Affairs Council had a conference, and one of the members of the Nation of Islam was there, and just loved his talk. And I was all in it. And that night, I got a call from my girlfriend because she went to another school. And she was like, "Yeah, my friend was at the talk. She saw you and you looked a little too involved." And she was like, "You thinking about being Muslim?" And I was like, "Girl, no." I believe in Jesus. I'm never giving up my belief in Jesus, so don't worry about all that. So we talked, whatever, got off the phone. That same night, I decided, because the Imam Abdul-Haq, I told you about earlier, he had given me my first Quran. And I decided, let me just look in the Quran today. Let me look at the Quran. So I opened it up. I mean, just how you just randomly let the book fall open. And that's what I did. I said, just let it fall open. We'll just read. What did I read? The story of Isa alayhi salam. Right? And how he spoke as a babe. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just broke out who Isa was. And I was like, subhanAllah. Well, I didn't say subhanAllah then. I was just like, wow. I said, Allah has just explained to me how I actually truly believe in Isa. That for me was profound. And after that, I just so I started, when I was going to church, I didn't want to hear no more talk about Jesus. I want to hear about God. If it was a hymnal, you talking about Jesus, I'm like, I turn it off. You know what I mean? Because all I wanted to do was hear about God. I didn't want to hear about Jesus. And when my grandfather died, my mother's father, when he died, because he lived a very reckless life. So when he died, I ran into my room, got on my knees, and I was, oh, Jesus, please forgive my grandfather. Please forgive him. Please forgive my grandfather for what he's done and the way he lived his life. Please. And then I started thinking, what am I praying to Jesus for? He's got nothing to do with nothing. I said, it's God who makes the final decision. So that moment, no more Jesus. You know what I mean? It was all God at that point.
MashaAllah.
And so, and that's just kind of what led me on.
MashaAllah. Now, you speak Spanish too, right?
Yes, not as good as I'd like to, but yes.
MashaAllah. Yeah, I remember that from some years before. I remember you were a couple of trips. You were going to a couple of Spanish countries and posting online. And I was actually, MashaAllah, I was impressed. And I said, how did that come about? Was that you just basically you're studying in school, or just interacting with people on top of that?
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, learning Spanish itself, through school, these kind of things. But I went to the Dominican Republic. On my father's side, my grandfather's father was married to a Dominican woman. And so my grandfather is part, Latino. Okay. And so I kind of wanted to kind of connect to that side of myself, right? Even though to some people that's a little watered down, bro, but I wanted to still kind of connect to it, right? So I went to the Dominican Republic. Actually, I lived there for 3 years with the purpose of doing dawah. And I was working with a couple of brothers in Santo Domingo to try and start an organization. Because the reason being is because I'm just be very blunt about it. When I went down there the first time, because I was going down to visit family people, members. When I went to the masjid in Santo Domingo and I looked around, I honestly did not like the way the Dominican people were being treated. You know what I mean? And it was very reminiscent of why and how many Black American Muslims have created their own masajid, as opposed to being connected with our Desi and Arab and other African, brethren. Even though some of us are still connected, within their masjids, we attend those particular masjids, but we, as you know, have predominantly Black masjids, right? And there's a reason for that, right? Because of people, the way you treat us. It's like, you guys don't know, we know, you follow us, you do what we tell you to do, this kind of thing. And because a lot of the Arabs and the Indian people who were coming there had money, they were paying for everything. They felt like, we're the ones who get a say, you don't. Basically, you guys are leeching off of us. We're the one providing for everything. So you listen to what we tell you. So if I tell you, well, the moon was not sighted in our area, you're following Saudi Arabia. We should be following the Sunnah and following the sighting in our area. No, we can follow what we want to do, and this is what we're going to do. And, but what I'm saying is correct. This is not from the Sunnah, because you guys are always talking about following the Sunnah. So all you guys ever talk about is following the Sunnah. No, this is the Sunnah, and you're telling me we have to follow Saudi Arabia? They were telling me, like, shut up. You guys don't like what we're doing, go start your own masjid. So when I heard that, I was
Yeah.
like, let's do our own masjid.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
when I got down there and we had our own Eid. Oh, bro. Oh, my God. Oh, they went off. Oh, Jamal ud-Deen is tearing up the community. He's splitting us up. And he's
Masjid Dirar here, Masjid
doing
Dirar.
exactly. Exactly. So I was like, oh, this brother's down here tearing up and messing up everybody. You know what I mean? And then a lot of people who were in the group fell off because they got threatened. You know, oh, we're never going to let you do this, and we're going to do that. We're going to work with the government to make sure you guys. And I said, look, I said, you know, it's funny. I said, you know, it's funny. They're telling you guys this, but they're not coming to me about it. I said, don't you think that's a little strange? Because see, I was working for a company here in America. I was just working remote before remote was a thing, right? Because this is like 2011, 2012, right? 2011. And so I had money coming from, my job in America. So in a sense, I was a person of means, right? Yeah. And I've got education, academically as well as Islamically. So now you're not talking to me like you don't talk to these people who you kind of look down upon because they don't have the education nor the wealth. You see what I'm saying? And that really bothered me, And so I really tried to help. But then when everybody fell off and I couldn't convince them to get back on board, I said, okay, fine, I'm leaving. So I left and went to Santiago, where the Dominican community had their own masjid. And there weren't a lot of, like, the immigrants that were there weren't very populous. You know what I mean? So they had very little control. And so I went up there and I started working with that community, and that was a very beautiful experience. The only problem was I lost my job, and so I had to get a job there. And so when my life became like everybody else's life, I didn't have the time to put forth to the community like I was in the beginning. And so that really hurt the dawah. And then I had some family issues, which brought me back to the United States. So I only got to spend the 3 years there. I intended to be there a little longer, but due to some family issues, I had to come back. So, but one of the things I learned is that being in a place like that, or any place, you're trying to do da'wah, help develop a community, bring life to a community. And when I say community, I don't mean just the Islamic community. I mean the greater community, because this is a bigger thing than just our masjid. The masjid has to be built and brought up, and the people have to be built and empowered, Islamically, academically, if you will, and have that power of knowledge of deen. But they also have to understand that there's a bigger thing going on with the greater community. And the reason why we're developing ourselves in our deen, yes, is for us personally to get closer to Allah. Excuse me, but it's also to help the greater community. You know what I mean? Because I get to the point where I was like, look, we can't just be here leeching off of this country. We're living here. This is our country too now. And we've got to take care of it. We got to look after it. We got to help the people. You know what I mean? We got to be involved. It's not about just being in our masjid and going home. We got to get involved. The people need to see it.
This is really interesting point that you bring up here. It wasn't something I was originally planning to ask you, but this is one of those problems. I think it's a problem that we have even among like African Americans, or we can call sort of indigenous African Americans, or those of what all the different terms that come up, terminology comes up, whatever, indigenous African Americans, where the attitude of a lot of us is that America is not our home. America, that we were just simply brought here slaves, and they never loved us, never wanted us here. And so we should not want to be here. We are Africans. And, and I actually recently had an exchange with someone of note, in this particular regard, who actually still feels this particular way, and actually prays against America, wants America to sort of, prays that America is destroyed, and he sees everything that's happening right now. It's like he thinks there's a civil war going on, and believes that his da'wah, his dua is being answered. My attitude is that, well, listen, America's a complicated place, has a complicated history, and America is my home, right? America is my home, and I want good for my home. And until Muslims create something better than what's here, or in the sense of a place where I have relative confidence in the court systems and the law and order, the sort of the question, the issue of justice. Of course, we know there's a lot of injustice, but like comparable, right? Until Muslims create something like that, I think I'm kind of stay here with Uncle Charlie, right? So. And and I might go some other place and stay there a little bit for some particular reason, short period of time, but ultimately I'm never going to lose sight of the fact that this is my home and this is where all my family members consider to be home. So anyway, so it's something that came to mind when you said what you said, and I'm glad that you share. It seems that we share a similar perspective about this. Is that when you live somewhere and you've decided that you're not going to go back where you came from, especially if you're an immigrant, that you have to consider that place to be your home, right? And you have to deal with your religious efforts in such a way that you mean good and you mean well for your fellow citizens, I guess you would say.
No, I agree. I think that, let's put it this way. It's funny too, when you hear brothers talk like that. I used to hear that a lot about with brothers when I was abroad. But let something happen and they're trying to get out, they'll be the first to scream, "I'm American." Right?
Yep.
Pull out the passport and everything. "I'm American. No, you can't do this." Or when the bad treatment starts coming, or they start wanting to treat you like they think what you are, then you start screaming, "I'm an American," right? I mean, let's keep it real. In some Arab countries, they don't respect a lot of the Africans, and so they treat them a certain kind of way. But then when they start treating you the same way they treat Africans, and you're like, "Hey, hold on a second," your English starts coming out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make it so that they understand that, oh, wait a minute, he's American. If not just saying I'm American, because you don't want to be treated like everybody else, but yet you got a problem with the country you come from. Let me say, so I say it from that standpoint. Let's say this too. I understand the sentiment of other people that have this view, our people were enslaved and so on and so forth. But because of the fact that we do not have a direct connection, right? This is home. I always go back to school days, right? And I'm thinking about that conversation between Big Brother Dean Almighty and right,
bringing it all back out.
That's right. You know what I mean? And so, funny thing, I used to have that haircut too. But anyways, when he said that, look, I'm a Black American. I'm from Detroit, Motown. You know what I'm saying? And the things that I do or don't do or can become detrimental to the people back in Africa, right? And so when I sit and think about that conversation, it does ring back to me a lot of times when I start thinking about this issue of Blackness, which is a whole nother discussion we could probably have at another time. But one of the things that I think about, right, when you talk to a Black Colombian, he's Colombian. You talk to a Black Cuban, he's Cuban. You talk to a Black Costa Rican, he's Costa Rican. You talk to Jamaican, he's Jamaican. And when you talk to a person from Trinidad, he's Trinidadian. Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Lucia. You understand what I'm saying? Bahamian. These people, in a lot of ways, on a day-to-day basis, are almost culturally still connected to their African heritage than we are.
Yes.
Right? And I say that from a lot of perspectives. And if you don't, for people who might disagree, well, travel to the countries and you see for yourself. That's all I got to say. You know what I mean? Maybe you still hold the position you hold, that's fine. But from my perspective, they seem to still hold on to more African traditions than we do, right? You have to be into it in order to get into that. Here in America, you have to be into that to be a part of those African traditional things. There, that's just how it is. Right? In these countries I mentioned, that's just kind of how it is on a day-to-day basis. So this a part of their lives is intertwined. For us, again, we have been cut off from our relationship to whatever tribe that we belong to. What many of us do, we pick and choose where we want to be from. And right now, the hot spot is Senegal and Gambia. You know what I mean? For a while, it was Nigeria. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to, all Black Americans want to pick a spot, you know what I mean? Where, you may not even come from, but we want that connection to Africa. And that's fine. I get it. But the reality is we're a new tribe of African, right? We are a new tribe of African called the Black American. I don't call myself African American. I'm a Black American.
Right. Yeah.
And as a Black American, this is where I'm at. I have a whole set of cultural experiences right here that I know and understand and try to navigate on a daily basis. And for me being here, like there was we had a class one time with Imam Zayd Shakir, and we were talking about the Hadith of Inna A'mal bin Niyat, and the Hadith on sincerity. But in that part where it says about hijrah, right? Right. So when we were talking about what is hijrah, one of the things he pointed out from one of the texts on the commentaries he was reading, that the Imam said that it is almost impermissible for a group of people to leave a country to go to another country, because what's going to fill that void except kufr? So if all the believers leave, we're not like America, where you leave America to go live in another country, what's going to fill the void of you leaving except more kufr? So now the da'wah doesn't get a chance to express itself more because you've taken it with you to another country. So now the only thing that fills that gap is more kufr. And that helps a country more than it helps. You know what I mean? And for us, even though we may be Muslim, we're still Black people.
Yeah.
And we still have a responsibility to the greater community, but we got to get ourselves together first.
Yeah, right.
But we still have a bigger and greater responsibility to our greater community. And we got to look out. I mean, if the Muslims decide, if it were true what I heard from so many people before I became Muslim, that these Arabs and Pakistanis and Indians don't want you in their religion and it's only for them, I never would have found this beautiful deen. Right. Never would come to it. So we know that that's not true. Yeah. And if it's not true, brother, if we man yu'min la yu'minu ahadukum hatta yuhibba li akhi ma yuhibbu. So if you're telling me that I'm not truly believing until I love for my brother what I love for myself, I love for my other brothers who are not Muslim, my human brothers, right? The sons of Adam, the sons and daughters of Eve. I want them to have this deen too. So what am I doing? Right. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. I live here in America. This is where Allah put me. Last point about this. Even the prophets of old, alayhim salam, were around kafirs, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
But they spent time calling them to the oneness of Allah.
Yeah. Yeah, right? Homie.
Let me break camp. Can't be here. Let me make dua against them. No, let's make dua for them. That's more powerful. That's right. That's right. It's more powerful to make dua that your enemy's heart changes than it is for their destruction. And their destruction to be upon kufr.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And I'm sure you've heard of the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ saw the procession of the Jewish person passing by, and he stood up and they said, "Ya Rasulullah, why are you standing up for him? For the Jew?" He says, "Because that's someone I did not get a chance to give the word of Islam to." In short.
Right, mashallah. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a few more questions. I mean, so I hope that you don't mind to keep you for a few additional minutes and stuff. Yeah, right. Yeah, so you've have you? I know you studied law. Like, did you complete your law degree? Or
no?
I know you also. Okay, what about your political science? You studied political science.
Yes, studied political science. Graduated with that. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, right. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, Muslims have involved themselves quite a bit in politics in the Western world, especially after 9/11. How would you grade Muslim progress in politics up to this point?
A C minus.
A C. Okay, C minus. All right. Yeah.
I say that because we're still reactionary people. As a whole, we're reactionary. We have not, as a people, we have not galvanized our political power in a way that is beneficial to the overall community.
Right.
I mean, there are people doing very, very hard work to try and make that happen. There are people, obviously we've got Muslims who are in office, in the White House, and alhamdulillah. But even still, because of sort of, we have different political positions, and some none at all. We just don't even bother with it. Oh, it's a Kafir system. We don't want to deal with it. Okay, fine. I mean, that's a position. Fine. But we have some people just oblivious still. Still, we have people just oblivious to what's happening around them. And so I think that we have yet to start becoming proactive instead of reactive. And I think that's going to take a lot longer time. And I think there's a lot more efforts that have to be done in that area to help us. And it also comes down to an issue of what is your community like in and of itself, and where are you at in terms of your politics, because a lot of these people are still kind of back home-ish, right? And so they're not concerned about what's happening here. It's more about what's back home and how does it affect them from back home. But there are some of us who are like looking at, well, what's happening here and understanding, it's not even just on a federal level we should be concerned ourselves with. We have to concern ourselves even more so with the state level, because that's what affects us the most directly. And work on a state level and try and make some headway there, to the point where, when people want to run for office, they have to come talk to the Muslims, and not just show up to the masjid or to the Eid celebrations and talk about some salam alaikum to everybody and give a quick speech and then walk out the masjid or walk out the gathering. Nah, you're going to sit down. You know what I mean? Because we're the Muslims and this is how we do things. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. Shaykh. I'm quite sure. I mean, there's a whole lot we could talk about there, but there's no time. Right? But I do appreciate you expressing your opinion about that issue. Now, one other thing that I like to do during these interviews is ask my guests to offer some example, I guess you would say, of a person, either someone in your life that maybe perhaps has, had a major impact. It could be someone who's living, someone who passed away, but perhaps, someone who people may not know much about, but they can find out more about, right, if they do some research, and you think that others need to know more about, I mean, is there anyone that you would like to highlight, showcase, just speak a few words about the individual and like why you think that person is important?
I'm thinking of three people.
Okay, Bismillah.
Three people in my mind. The first one has to be my teacher, Habib Umar bin Hafidh. And I know he's become very popular in terms of, with al-Mustafa and talks and things of this nature. But it's not just about that. It's about what he represents and what the mission is. That's the more important piece. And I think, and that goes right into the next person, which is Habib Ahmed Mashhur al-Haddad, right? Both of these men have had an impact on my life from the point of view of the dawah, right? Because Habib Umar was the first person, to make me have to stand up and give a talk in Arabic. He was the first person to get me to start talking and thinking about how am I going to disseminate this knowledge to people? Because before it was just a personal thing. I didn't really care. I don't belong to any one community. I'm a self-proclaimed spiritual nomad. You know what I mean? I just go everywhere. You ask me to come, I come. You know what I mean? I very rarely ever tell anybody no. I mean, I've had to, but for certain reasons. But for the most part, and I can probably count that again on one hand, how many times I've had to say no, right? So I go wherever asked because that's the way of my teachers. You see what I'm saying? This is how they did things. Whenever they were asked, they went, unless it was a conflicting schedule. But that is how I've kind of modeled myself, in that, I'm not seeking fame. I almost told you no. Because I was like, I don't want to be known. I ain't trying to be popular. I don't want people calling me up. You know what I mean? But at the same time, this is something that has to be done, right? For different reasons. And so my thing was, this is how they operated. And Habib Mashhur, like 70,000 people became Muslim at his hand in Africa.
You
know what I mean? And that's somebody a lot of people don't pay attention to. That's someone whose life needs to be studied, and the people that are around him, right? The people that were around him as well, they have to be studied and learned about, read about, And I think that, like, what was it that caused him to want to do da'wah? And these many people became Muslim at his hands. What was it about him? What was the approach? You know what I mean? And I think that those are the kind of things that help one want to also become transformed into something greater, where you refining character and these kind of things, just reading about his life, and understanding again that mission, right, and the purpose, and then what goes behind all of that, right? And so those two things, those two people are very, I think, important for me in terms of my understanding. And then lastly, we got to give credit to Brother Shabazz, Brother Malcolm X.
That's right.
Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Got to study him. There's still not enough said about him.
Yeah. And everybody wants to claim him. Everybody wants to claim him.
Everybody wants to claim him. My thing is that when I read his autobiography and closed it, I said I want to be a Muslim. Right? When I finished that, and I read other books like the FBI Files. There was another book, I forgot the name of it. It was written by another guy who was a West Indian guy, and he was talking to Malcolm X, having conversations with him about his Caribbean side, because Malcolm X's mother was from the islands. And so he was asking him about that aspect of his life. And so reading these different books and from different perspectives about Malcolm X was very profound for me. So I think that, there's not enough that can be said to me about Malcolm X. The point, like I said, I didn't read Alex Haley's part, and I was like, I don't care about what Alex had to say. You know what I mean? I wanted to hear what Malcolm's life was. And when I finished in class, I said, you know what? That's it. I want Islam. I want to be a Muslim. Just reading that man's life. So,
Allah. Yeah, alhamdulillah. I really do appreciate that. Now, do you have like a website or anything like that people can follow your efforts at? Like I said, I know you don't promote yourself. I've seen you on different programs, but I don't see you as very active on social media or anything like that. But do you have any way that people can sort of follow your efforts, or whatever you want to call them,
right? Yeah.
Activities.
SubhanAllah, you're right. I don't promote myself at all, and I don't even want to promote this. But yeah, I'm on Facebook, and but I'm not always on Facebook. You know what I mean? So sometimes, like, I go on there and I see like this long friend request. I'm like, oof, you know what I mean? I don't. Sorry. So if I haven't befriended you, I'm sorry. Don't feel away. It's just that I don't like I have surges. I'll get on social media and I'm there like a couple of months, 3 months out of the time, then I disappear and I'm gone. My algorithm is messed up. I don't see the same people anymore that I was seeing previously. You know what I mean? And same thing with Instagram. So I got an Instagram page. But I don't really post on there. Every now and then I might repost things that I've seen, but nothing of myself. Nothing of myself. I don't do talks on, or specifically to place on to social media. So no, I know that some of the khutbahs that I've done and a few talks on YouTube through the various masajids that I've done, I've done khutbahs for. They may post something on their websites, on their YouTube pages or channels. Other than that, I'm sorry. I just don't. Maybe I should, but I'm afraid to. You know what I mean? To be honest.
No, and I hear you. Well, it can be a blessing, but also a curse, right? And as we know, and may Allah bless you. I mean, I've mentioned this with a couple of other people I've interviewed before, but I think it really has really strong sort of really deep meaning for me this time around with you, because every time I interview someone who I've actually been familiar with or known for a lot of years, I learn a lot of new information, right? And you always assume that you know everything that's really essential about a person, and I've learned quite a bit right today, and I really do feel enriched by this conversation, right? As personally, because I do this largely for the public, because I want the public to know people who I personally feel they should know more about. And you tell us who you think we should know more about as well. And I also feel that what it does is provide, especially Muslims who are on social media, an opportunity to watch or listen to something which is very beneficial to them, as opposed to a lot of negative, information that coming from different corners of the blogosphere or the web itself, and a lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of the negativity is coming from Muslims themselves, right? So again, that's my thinking along this line. But like I said, I've learned quite a bit, and I really do appreciate you agreeing to this conversation, and I do think that people should know more about you, and I appreciate your honesty and your frankness when it comes to a lot of these issues. Barakallahu fikum. Okay, inshallah. Well, inshallah. So hopefully get to see you next time I'm in Atlanta or next time you're in the Bay Area. Definitely look me up, give me a call, and let's try to stay in touch, inshallah.
I will, inshallah. I will. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you.
Inshallah. Barakallahu fik. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Subscribe to Lamppost Education Initiative on YouTube and Spotify.